Aloha kako. Today I would like to share an excerpt from my self-published book, Pokane at Hemolele Bay. Hopefully it will inspire you in acquiring your very own copy to see the outcome of this fantastic paranormal tale set in Hawaii. So sit back and enjoy. Keanu left her mother and aunt to discuss the young woman's future. She jumped onto her bed and held the kauri. "Kaiulu, can you hear me?" The voice of the kupua was weak, but Keanu could still hear him. "I have a feeling there are going to be some major changes. We just got back from the hospital, and the news of our baby put my auntie into a rage. She's talking this whole thing over with Mama." Kaiulu's response was faint. "I'm so sorry that this happened, Keanu. Just keep me informed every night on what's going on. We can talk about what we can do during your next visit here. I don't want you to get too stressed out. We need to protect our child. Your health and the health of baby are my top priority." Keanu felt slightly better, but not knowing what was going to happen to her made the young woman very nervous. "Kaiulu, what if they forced me to give up our baby?" Kaiulu could only remind his wife that they were tied to his realm, and they both could leave her realm at any Pokane of their choosing. "If all else fails over there, Keanu, I will keep you and the baby here with me. We can finally be together." The young woman got her fears under control. "Sometimes I forget about my ability to leave this all behind. I don't want to be too overzealous, though. My leaving prematurely could cause my mother to do something rash. I want her to enjoy her forever after with my father just as much as I want ours." "You're a wonderful, caring daughter, Keanu. You keep doing what you believe is right inside your heart." Kaiulu's voice was becoming too faint to really hear. "Keanu, keep me updated. I love you, Ku'uipo." Keanu hugged the kauri. "I promise I will. I love you." Light tapping could be heard from just behind her bedroom door. Auntie Marilyn's voice vibrated through soon after. "Keanu, sweetie, could you please join your mother and me outside?" Keanu could hear the difference in her auntie's tone. She thought, has the judge already come up with a sentencing so soon? It felt as if her intestines were being knotted like a pretzel. She called out, "I'll be right out, Auntie." Keeping her stress from rising too high, Keanu meditated. Slow, deep breaths, Keanu. Remember to think, not react. Be mature about everything they say, and remember that Kaiulu is only a month away if there's a need to escape. The sounds of Dolores' coughing traveled the yard as Keanu exited the house. Rounding the corner, she could see Auntie Marilyn rubbing her mother's back. She approached both women and took a seat across from them. Auntie Marilyn spoke first. Keanu assumed it was because Mama needed time to calm herself from the news of today's visit. "Keanu, I must regretfully retract the offer we made to you, staying with us up at the ranch, if anything should happen to your mother during your pregnancy. With the news of your current condition, it would be inappropriate for our business and image. I'm very sorry, sweetie. You know that we love you, but this predicament would end our trade. We can revisit the proposal after the child is born, but as it is, there's nothing we can do." Dolores' eyes were lobster red. The look of disappointment in her face was breaking Keanu's heart. The pregnant teen knew that she had probably broken her mother's heart 10 times over since Auntie Marilyn unloaded all the information. "Keanu, I don't understand." Dolores began to wheeze, which caused her voice to strain. "How could you do this to our ohana?" As she paused to catch more air, Keanu sat waiting patiently for her mother to finish her lecture. "Your auntie took a lot of stress off me the day she and your uncle accepted you into their home. Now look, this is not her pilikia. You're making it difficult for them to extend their help. It was humiliating for your auntie to renege the offer because of these new circumstances." Dolores' cough was the harshest either of them had ever heard. "Mama, maybe you should rest," Keanu pleaded. Dolores made a fist and shook it at her daughter as she tried to catch her breath. Marilyn swooped some water over while Dolores struggled to regain her composure. "The worst part of it all is that you don't even seem all that concerned about your current condition. How can you be so casual about this?" Keanu addressed Marilyn first. "I'm so sorry that I put you in this position, Auntie. It wasn't my intention to take your hospitality and throw it back in your face. I'm so grateful for your good graces, and I apologize for making you feel this way. I know it's not your intention to turn your back on me, but I am the one who created this uncomfortable situation." Marilyn started to tear. She hid her face inside her palms as she sobbed. Keanu looked at her mother. "I never meant to bring you more baggage at such a painful time in your life, Mama. I don't even know how this happened to me. God's honest truth." Keanu could see her mother struggling to understand the laws of nature and what her daughter expected her to believe. "I know this is difficult for both of you to understand. Even I am having a difficult time making sense of this, but God has given me something special. I pray one day God explains why I was chosen, but I see it as being a bona fide miracle. The day the tsunami took me away, When you all found me, and with the help of Oki, I came back from the dead. That was another miracle. You and Daddy finding each other that day. Another miracle. Miracle or not, Keanu, no one is going to be accepting of you or our family regardless of how this happened. Dolores found her strength again. Marilyn hopped in to give Dolores a chance to rest. Both you and your mother are very strong in your beliefs. However, I have a harder time understanding things of that nature. I need more proof. To see is to believe, and I use what I know to form my perception of the world. Keanu, people don't just get pregnant. It doesn't happen that way. I know it's hard to believe, Auntie. It is bizarre. But would you feel any differently if I told you that I dreamed of my baby? I saw my son before I even knew I was pregnant. Keanu tried her best to make the impossible seem plausible. Dolores shot her amber eyes at her sister. Kaneo kapo? Marilyn sat shaking her head quickly back and forth. Nope, I never believed in any of that. Dolores returned her gaze toward her daughter. Keanu, at any time within the past 3 or 4 months, did a man come to you while you were dreaming? Did he treat you like a wife? His wife? Keanu tried her best not to give away anything about her husband. I'm sure I've had many dreams, Mama. I just don't really remember what they were about when I wake up. What's Kaneo kapo? Marilyn continued shaking her head and looked up at her niece. It's nothing, Keanu. Just a stupid story that was created to cover up for promiscuous individuals in a family. She could feel Dolores' stare piercing into her temple. Keanu looked on, longing for more details. Fine. So your mother and I went to school with a friend that had a visitor come to her one night. She told us a story in secret. She believed it was some subconscious yearning she had, like her brain's way of telling her she wanted to be intimate. During the dream, a virile young Hawaiian man had laid with our friend. She said it was very vivid and that her visitor was handsome. A few months later, our friend disappeared, left school. We never saw her again. Her parents remained, but she was gone, Dolores added. Marilyn shivered. It was like a horror movie. Her parents went on with their lives pretending they never, ever had a daughter. It was like she never existed. Even our teacher wouldn't acknowledge her life at the school. Keanu was worried for the girl. Did either of you find out what really happened? Marilyn nodded. Sometime after she disappeared, I took a trip to Kauai to visit a friend for the summer. We both went shopping in Kealia, and I saw this woman walking with a little girl that looked just like our missing friend. I couldn't believe my eyes. I knew it couldn't have possibly been our classmate. She looked just like she did when we were all much younger. It didn't dawn on me until after they were gone that the woman the little girl was with, her mother, was the girl that disappeared from our school. I didn't recognize her at first because she looked so old, like the life had been sucked out of her. Raising a child while you're still a child is hard. Raising a child without both parents is hard. Raising a child in today's society is hard. You have all 3 of these things going against you, Keanu. Dolores warned her daughter. I do not feel like I'm getting any better, so chances are high that you're doing this without me, kiddo. Looks like I need to make some hard decisions, and you need to follow them for your sake and the sake of my grandchild. Do you understand? Dolores' chest rumbled as she inhaled. Keanu nodded in acceptance. Yes, Mama, I will honor your decision. Okay then, go get some lunch made. I'm starving. Dolores watched Keanu walk away. She turned to Marilyn with a concerned look and whispered, Kaneo kapo, tita. Marilyn huffed. That's rubbish. Dolores raised her shoulders. The Haukea line has mana. You know this. It wouldn't surprise me if some Kaneo kapo came to take advantage of my baby. Do you think we should have told Keanu the girl that went missing was her actual blood relative? Marilyn scratched at her neck. Dolores took slow, deliberate breaths. I don't think it would have mattered if she knew that. I think it would have been more interesting for her to know that the friend you went to visit that summer was her Uncle John. Marilyn lowered her head and cast her eye in the direction that Keanu traveled. In a hushed tone, she barked at her sister-in-law. The difference, Dolores, is that I never got pregnant. Later that evening, Oki stopped by the house to pick up his mother. He found his auntie and mom sitting on the lanai playing a game of gin rummy. He walked around the table and hugged his auntie. Hey, Anake, how you doing? Well, other than your mom pulling her fast moves on me, I'm doing just fine. Dolores slapped down a pair of 9s. Oki walked over and smooched his mom on her head. Hey, Ma. Marilyn wore a smirk on her face the whole time, but she wrinkled her nose affectionately at her boy to show him recognition. So what were the results of Keanu's visit? Dolores lowered her cards face down on the table. Well, Oki, it wasn't the most agreeable. He caught his auntie's drift. Keanu stay inside? Dolores nodded as she stared intently at her hand. Okay, I'm going to talk to her if that's all right, Ma. Marilyn waved her hand, and Oki left the women to their battle. As he took the corner, he could hear his mom yell out, "Jin!" Dolores let out an unfavorable grunt. Keanu sat in the living room, reading a magazine. Oki sat quietly next to her on the couch, watching her as she placed her reading materials on the coffee table. Bad news, Keanu? Quite possibly the worst news a teenage girl could give her parent. Keanu reached out for and hugged a decorative pillow. Oki pondered for a minute. Well, you get two options. I can go find this guy and bust him up real bad, or I can go grab his Okola and you guys can get married. Keanu rolled her eyes. Neither of those things are really options, Oki. At least not in my case. Besides, forcing a guy to marry you seems a bit like prison. Oki stood up. Punch his head? Got it. Where do I find this clown? Keanu shook her head. Sit down. She watched Oki plop back in his seat. Punch his head? What's wrong with you? Keanu lowered her volume. You're not going to understand what's happening. You really need to have an open mind here. I don't want you to fly off the handle, okay? So what then? What did the doctor man say? Oki awaited the full story. Keanu turned her knees toward her cousin. So the doctor has estimated my conception around April. He said I'm due around the new year. Your mom bullishly demanded I get a pelvic exam. The doctor found that I'm still a virgin, which I am. Oki's eyes became round and he blinked while struggling to comprehend what he was hearing. You're pregnant? But I thought you never... the kind like that. Oki rolled his hands around each other to continue his point. Keanu nodded. That's the gist of it. You're gypped, cuz. Oki threw his palms up and he turned away. Keanu slapped Oki in the arm. This situation is destroying my mother, and your mother views me as a disgrace, and the community is going to treat me like a leper. Oki looked around as if he were hiding contraband. Penny Royal, he said softly yet clearly. Keanu looked at her cousin, waiting for him to say more. What? It's an herb that... Oki slid his finger across his neck and pointed his nose and narrowed his eyes at Keanu's stomach. That is not an option at all. Keanu screamed loud enough for Marilyn and Dolores to hear. Oki had a look of shock. Hey, I thought you said open mind, lady. Keanu rubbed her stomach. I would never give up this child. Not now, not ever. Her cousin frowned. Keanu, please tell me that's not the baby of who I'm thinking. Keanu's face displayed panic. Oki, it's not what you think. Let me explain. I can't believe that guy took advantage of you. I should bust his face, Oki announced in anger. Stop it, Oki. Kaulu and I decided to make it right. See? There's no problem at all, okay? Keanu's voice still seemed as if she were pleading. The young man was surprised. You guys gonna get married? Yes. Keanu tried to help cool the temperature of the room. Kaulu is officially my husband. Oki scratched at his forehead. Yeah, one invisible deadbeat of a husband. Keanu, your relationship is not just long distance. It's long distance. I never see this guy before. I don't know what he's like. How is the father gonna see this baby? Can he come raise this child with you? Keanu shook her head. Baby and I would need to live there with him. I'd have to say goodbye to you, your mom and dad. Oki threw his auntie into the list. And your mother. What, you was going to leave Anake all alone? Keanu explained. I was going to leave after Mama passed away. Oki was blown away. No, Oki, it's something Kaulu and I have planned since the beginning. We were always going to be together, but when the time was right, I didn't know Mama was going to get sick. The day I met him, the day I died, I was ready to relinquish my spirit to stay with him in his realm. He was the one that convinced me to come back and be with Mama until the end. Oki grunted. How nice of him for being so considerate. And look at you now. Oki waved his hands at Keanu's tummy. Maybe it would have been better if you stayed with him that day. At least your mother wouldn't be sick and traumatized. Keanu cast a stink eye at her cousin. You make like I gave her tuberculosis. Oki slapped his knee and stood up. I told you, if this guy caused any trouble for our Ohana, that would be it. Keanu lunged at Oki's hands, gripping them in her own. Please wait. What are you going to do? Please don't make matters worse. What on God's green earth are you both yelling about in here? Oki's mother needed to scream to cut above all the noise. Junior? Dolores stood behind Marilyn and her face just looked fed up. Her wheezing filled the silence as the four adults just stared across the room at each other. Oki stepped forward, causing Keanu to plead one last time. No, Oki, please don't. Keanu's cousin freed himself from Keanu's grip. Ma, I will do what I can to help take care of Anake, even if that means taking over Keanu's responsibilities. Dolores' head dropped and she cried. She reached over to Marilyn and rubbed the side of her waist and nodded, which made Marilyn address the situation. Keanu, your mother was going to wait until tomorrow to make a more informed decision. But with the help of Oki, I believe we can tell you of your fate now. Tears dropped down the side of the pregnant woman's cheeks as Marilyn continued to cast judgment. Your mother will be sending you away for the remainder of your pregnancy. She will be making accommodations for your travel. You will not be attending school until the birth of your baby." Marilyn began to cry. "I regret to say that this may be the last time you see your mother. If you need to tell her anything that has been weighing on your mind, you should use the next couple of days to make amends. Do what you need to do and say what you need to say." Marilyn reached over and hugged her sister. She mumbled lightly into Dolores' ear and turned toward her son. "Oki, I'm ready to go." Oki and Marilyn left like a breeze. Keanu went to her mother's side. "Mama, let me help you to bed." Dolores stopped and spoke without looking at her daughter. "I think you helped Mama enough." Dolores made eye contact with Keanu. "You're an adult now. I think it's time you worry about taking care of your baby." Dolores blubbered on her way into her room. She quietly closed her bedroom door, diving deep into heartache. Keanu sat motionless in the living room, thinking about what had just happened, the sounds of her mother's misery being her only company. In the morning, an unsettling silence contrasted the harsh tones that were cast about during the evening hours. Keanu didn't want to bother Mama after what happened. She allowed her mother some peace as she sat on the living room couch wallowing in self-pity. It felt as if the whole world turned against her. Keanu worried about the consequences she would suffer from being young, pregnant, and single. The quiet room began to fill with Keanu's wild ideas. Why should something like this destroy a person's life? It wasn't long ago that girls younger than I am had children, and they were accepted. Keanu's mind moved from being shunned by her loved ones to thoughts of the near future. Oki is going to take care of my responsibilities? I'll come home with baby and find the house a wreck and Mama starving to death. Oh, Keanu, you know that's not true. Oki would take care of Mama, but not as well as I would. I'm sure about that. Keanu thought about the little one that grew in her belly. So, now I become baggage to someone else just because my family has a reputation to protect. When did appearance become more important than family? This world is definitely headed to a bad place. Mommy just wants you to know that I would never send you away, no matter what. Keanu thought about how her family name was well known on the island. She exhaled with force. Where exactly is Mama going to be sending us through this whole ordeal? Baby moved around as if sympathetic to its mommy's situation. Keanu rubbed her tummy. It's okay, we'll be fine. It's just you and me, Pooh. The baby rubbed against her hands as if it were swimming. The young mother smiled and closed her eyes. Are you getting hungry, my little shark baby? A sharp pain seared over the surface of Keanu's stomach. The young woman let out a scream that could be heard a mile away. She grabbed her Pooh and began to panic. What's wrong, baby? The movement inside her could only be described as a tornado of knives whirling around at high velocity. Keanu fell over crying. Mama! Mama, please help me. The door to Keanu's mother's room remained dark and motionless. Blood began to run down her inner thighs as she planted herself on knee and elbow. What have I done? All of my worry, all of my troubles are hurting my baby. Keanu struggled to get up to her feet. When the pain subsided, she stepped forward to make her way over to the bathroom. She was lifted into the air and slammed hard onto the couch with a supernatural force. Keanu's belly began to bloat. It grew and grew, causing Keanu to cry in excruciating pain. Water trickled like sweat from the thinnest areas of her skin as her stomach stretched. It distended so far that her belly tore open like an overfilled water balloon. The explosion propelled everything that was inside her through the air. She let out another scream and felt a stinging sensation burning across her face. Keanu's eyes popped open. Auntie Marilyn stood above her niece, eyes bulging, with her hands still held up in the air. Good Lord, Keanu! Keanu threw herself up in her bed. She was drenched in sweat and breathing heavily. She looked down at her stomach to find that she was still in one piece. Keanu reached out for her auntie. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for making you all so mad at me. Marilyn sat down, recovering from Keanu's insane behavior. Sweetie, we aren't mad at you. Just a predicament. Today's society is, well, it is very judgmental. Everyone forms opinions and spreads their views with others, true or not, and some of these things unfortunately damage the reputation of a person or family. We can't continue to do good business if our clients feel we're not upstanding and dignified. Keanu sat back down and nodded. I know, Auntie. Marilyn looked around Keanu's room. Were you planning on staying in here all day? Keanu was surprised to see that it was almost 11:30. Auntie Marilyn made her way over to the door. Well, come on outside. Your mom has something she'd like to talk to you about. Keanu quickly pulled off her soaked nightie and threw on some fresh clothes. When she emerged from her room, she could see her mother and auntie through the window sitting patiently in the picnic area. Uncle John was in the kitchen fiddling around as if preparing some food. Come, sweetheart. Dolores motioned to Keanu to join them as she made her way out onto the lanai. Keanu sat down with a face of despair. In her heart, she cried desperately out to her mother for help. Keanu hoped that Mama could sense her thoughts, sense she didn't want to be sent away, that she didn't want to go through any of this without her. Dolores looked at Keanu with resolve. We just got back from town. I talked to Aunt Sakura about our little hiccup. Dolores wheezed as her eyes shot toward Keanu's stomach. She offered to take you in for the duration of your pregnancy. She assured me that there's lots of space on the property to keep you hidden, as well as space enough to keep you busy so you won't go out of your mind. Not that you would need any of it. Dolores fought to keep a steady breath. Keanu smiled as she praised her mother in her mind. I knew Mama would find a way to make it all work. Dolores could see that her daughter misconstrued her words, so she spoke with precision. Keanu, you're not staying here in Ainapau. You're going to be living on Oahu. Keanu's hopeful smile crept away as her eyes reddened and filled with beads of water. She looked toward the floor, tears streaming down her face. Okay, Mama. When will I need to leave? End of the month, Dolores said sternly, as a cough unexpectedly escaped her lips. She continued after her chest ceased burning. In the meanwhile, 3 things will happen. 1. Oki will be staying with us to get comfortable with living here. 2. You will help your cousin to find everything he'll need to help me, and he will learn from your example. And 3. You will continue to make yourself scarce, as you have done all your life, until it's time for you to leave. Uncle John made his way over with 2 cups of hot tea. I'll be the one who's taking you to the airport. He handed 1 cup to Dolores and the other to his wife. Did you want some mamaki, honey girl? Kiana shook her head. No thank you, Uncle John. Dolores held her cup near her chin, allowing the steam to rise up to her nose. She took in a breath and continued to address Keanu. When you go to Aunt Sakura's, you must be on your best behavior and help whenever needed. Above and beyond, just as we Haukeas do. You will leave an area nicer than it was when you arrived. Keanu responded immediately. Yes, Mama. I will do everything that I'm asked to make sure I'm not a burden. Dolores spoke out from her heart and mind because she could see her daughter was trying. She knew her predicament may not have been completely her fault. Keanu, with any luck, you won't need to go away. Keanu's mother coughed and it sounded harsh. Maybe I'll be gone before the month is over and you can stay here to raise your child. Marilyn handed Dolores some tissues to blow her nose. Keanu thought about what her mother said. If Mama succumbs to this disease before the month is over, I'll be leaving everything behind to Uncle John and Auntie Marilyn anyway. Her lack of emotion in what her mother just said upset her auntie. She tried to hold back from saying anything that she would regret. So, your mother basically asked the good Lord to take her by the month's end and all you can do is sit there? Dolores fanned her hand toward her sister-in-law. Marilyn, she's got a lot to chew on at the moment. Don't shove more onto her. Knowing what was coming in the hereafter hindered Keanu's sensitivity. She knew her mother was going somewhere better. She knew that she was going to see Daddy. Yes, I'm sorry. My mind is moving in so many directions. Of course I'm hurt by what Mama is saying. I don't want her to leave any of us, especially before she has a chance to meet the baby. Marilyn let her guard down. I keep forgetting that your little one is not a curse. It's the future of our ohana. I'm sorry. It's just that I'm projecting a lot of my own insecurities towards you. Dolores smiled at Marilyn's sincerity. Under different circumstances. She grabbed her sister's hand. Marilyn nodded and grabbed a couple of tissues for herself. Where the heck is that boy, John? It was at that moment Oki came through the door holding 2 large paper bags. Time for eat! Dolores was pleasantly surprised at how efficient and quiet Oki was as he helped around the house. She worried that he would be a bumbling, overly talkative mess. It was nice to have been proven wrong in this particular instance. He had demonstrated how swift and direct he could be, even when compared to her daughter. Although the young man still lacked much refinement in his speaking, he had improved in his ability to converse without coloring his words with foolishness and being flat-out inappropriate. His journey into thinking before speaking had made him a tolerable conversationalist, and Dolores found herself being less annoyed by the young man. Oki explained as he took Dolores' plate. Anake, when I wash the dishes, I go in au. Tonight I stay holo with the hui. If you need something, tell me before I hele. Dolores coughed and nodded at his assertion. I'm fine, Oki. Thank you for dinner. It was very good. Oki winked at his auntie and headed toward the kitchen. While Dolores pondered her condition and thought about her daughter's future, Keanu basked in the warm glow of Kaiulu's realm. Well, I do believe I will be heading off to Oahu for a while. Keanu leaned against Kaiulu's side as they sat on the makaloa that Leinane gifted them. Kaiulu just stared off into the ocean at the incoming waves. Soon, Keanu. Just be patient. We'll be together like this very, very soon. He rubbed his hand over the soft, round protrusion of his wife. You, Me and Manoli'i are going to be very happy." He smiled a large grin that made his deep blue eyes disappear. Keanu shot up. "Manoli'i?" Kaelu raised his hands in confusion. "What? It's just a nickname." Keanu scowled. "I'm not calling my baby a pet's name." Kaelu looked appalled. "Keanu, my dad would call me Manoli'i when I was little." Keanu couldn't envision Kaelu being little, but she did see that she hurt her man. "I'm very sorry. I didn't mean to imply the name was bad. I just think that it should have a bit more to it." Kaelu's smile returned and he understood what she meant. "We still have a lot of time to figure it out anyway." Keanu looked at Kaelu in astonishment. "I'm growing faster than any pregnant woman before me, Kaelu. At this rate, I'll be having baby in just a couple of months." Kaelu chuckled as if brushing off her distress. "I'm not sure how long it takes to have a baby of a kupua, but this little one's coming sooner rather than later. It doesn't feel as though we have lots of time." Kaelu laughed even harder. "We don't need to name the baby as soon as it's born. We need to see the behaviors and talents before we make a decision. When that happens, it'll be a natural fit." Keanu was annoyed. "What do we do in the meanwhile? We can't just have a nameless baby." Kaelu flexed his brow at his wife. "Manoli'i." "Ugh." Keanu stood as quickly as her frame could allow and started to walk away from her baby's father. "Manoli'i?" Kaelu jumped up to help her on her way. "Where are you going?" "Silly," Keanu muttered. Kaelu watched his love work her way down toward the shore. "Huh? I'm being silly? This isn't ancient Hawaii anymore, Kaelu." Keanu spoke angrily towards the sounds of the surf. "We're not gifting our child a name come their first birthday." "How is that being silly? That's tradition." Kaelu was perturbed by his wife's callousness. "You know, you're sounding a lot like those people you live with, Keanu." Keanu stopped and turned in shock. Her mind flipped inside out as she realized she was being ignorant to the history of her Hawaiian heritage. Her father's face, shaking his head in disappointment, popped into Keanu's mind. "It feels like I'm such a letdown. I'm a failure as a daughter, I'm a failure as a wife, and I'm going to be a failure as a parent." Kaelu held Keanu close. "You are not a failure as a wife, and I know your father couldn't be happier having such a wonderful woman as his daughter." "Why? What is it that makes me so wonderful?" Kaelu released Keanu and began counting on his fingers. "Your voice is beautiful. You are beautiful." Keanu's face became glum, which made Kaelu think a bit less topically. "And you're kind. So very generous." "Name one time I've ever been kind. I can't even find the courage to talk to people, let alone help anyone." Kaelu dropped his arms to his sides. "The first day I met you, you showed your true beauty. I was a complete stranger, yet when you heard my stomach growl, you offered me to come and join you for a meal. You asked if I wanted to meet your family. You shared your deepest thoughts with me. Who was I? Who was I to get that kind of consideration from you?" Keanu could see in Kaelu's eyes that he was being so sincere. "I feel as though I can do nothing right lately. It feels like even the universe no longer wishes to send me a sign. You have too much worry happening in your mind. It's stopping you from seeing all the wondrous things you're doing. You've been keeping healthy for baby, caring for your mother, and you've even worried about me and Mama getting our sweet desserts. If you just slow down a little, I'm sure you'll hear Mother Nature is still talking to you. Slow down and listen." Keanu made her way slowly toward the shore, thinking about her husband's assessment. She cleared her mind and shut her eyes, taking a deep breath in. A small rush of ocean water slipped up the shore, flowing over Keanu's foot. She let out a small, high-pitched yelp. Kaelu ran beside her and grabbed for her hand. "Are you all right, my love?" Keanu looked perplexed. "The water is colder than I have ever felt it here," she said in a half-worry. Kaelu stepped into the wave before it hurried away. "You're right. Strange, I've never felt the sea this chilly here before." "Papa be praised!" Keanu laughed and jumped up at her husband, wrapping her arms around his neck. "It's perfect!" Kaelu lowered his wife's feet back down to the sand. What's happening now, Keanu? Your mood changes are tough to keep up with." "Kaianu." Kaelu's wife had a gleam in her honey-warm eyes. Kaelu looked as if he were bobbing his head to an imaginary beat. He glanced down toward his child. "Kaianu?" Keanu let out another high-pitched yelp, causing Kaelu concern. "What is it now?" Keanu's eyes were rounded. "It feels like baby is swimming in my tummy. Here, feel." The surprised young woman snatched her husband's hand and rested it on her opu. Kaelu could feel his child rubbing up against his palm. "Can you feel him?" Kaelu gave his wife a strange stare. "Him?" Keanu shook her head. "It was the weirdest thing, Kaelu. I had that dream about being in the dark forest with the boy." Kaelu interrupted. "My love, you have been having all kinds of nightmares lately. They are nothing but your insecurities brought to light." "No, Kaelu, listen." Keanu squeezed his hand that rested upon her abdomen. This dream was different. That boy I met, he felt familiar. I felt as though I needed to take care of him. I think that was Kayanu. Kaelu took a deep breath. It sounds valid, but I don't want you to be disappointed if your dream deceived you. He hugged his wife and rested his face in her soft, silky hair. The sweet fragrance of her head made Kaelu's entire being relax. As long as you don't have any more night terrors of my manoli'i tearing through your stomach again. My child would never hurt his mama. Keanu squeezed Kaelu. That was a very terrifying experience. A strange sensation washed over her shoulders, intruding into their heart-to-heart. Keanu's arms began to spasm uncontrollably. Kaelu watched with concern. What's going on, my love? I don't know. Keanu felt a sharp sting on her face radiate from one side to the other. Ow! Kaelu, now growing in fear, reached his decorated arms out to help his wife. Keanu? He shouted in a panic. Keanu's body began to shake uncontrollably as the temperature dropped around her. She watched the vibrant yellows and pinks of the sky dissolve into a dusty monochromatic gray. Kaelu, standing with his arms still reaching out, slowly withdrew as if being sucked away into a current. Kaelu, no! Keanu screamed as she felt her body going through a free fall. She was moved at lightning speed, just as she had when Kaelu took her to see her father at Hemolele Bay. She fell faster and faster until she finally hit hard onto a soft surface. Her body bounced upward and she inhaled a huge breath. The light of dawn scattered throughout her bedroom. Her heart was racing as the cool glow from the window finally bore the detail of her Auntie Marilyn's face. She sat atop the edge of Keanu's bed, holding the girl by her shoulders. Keanu turned in anguish to see Kaelu's heart fragmented and splayed on the floor at the feet of her mother. Keanu cried, Mama, what have you done? Kane o kapo, Keanu? Kane o kapo? How could you do this? Dolores screamed with all of her strength. Her claws were outstretched toward the scattered blue shards laying on her daughter's carpet. Keanu watched in horror as the fragments of the kauri slowly seeped into the soft fabric. Dolores continued her tirade. I just knew I should have smashed that thing sooner. I cannot believe you'd do something like this. You associated yourself with a demon, and now have become pregnant with an unholy child. Keanu shook her head. No, Mama, Kaelu is not a demon. He loves me and... Dolores cut in. That's what demons do. They lie and cheat, waiting patiently to get what they want. Have you learned nothing from your savior? Keanu spoke in a manner that Dolores had never experienced from a daughter. Mama, Kaelu is my husband. Marilyn shot up from the young woman's bed. Keanu's voice grew louder. We are starting a family together, with or without your consent. I knew I should have torn that damned cowrie from your hands that day you came out of Hemolele. I knew that it was something evil. Dolores stopped to catch her breath. Keanu cried as the last of Kaelu's broken heart disappeared into the twisted fibers of the rug. Kaelu was the one who saved me that day. Kaelu was the one who told me my spirit needed to come back to you. Kaelu is the only one who has ever truly understood me. I will never be able to see my husband again. Keanu will never get to see his father. Mama, you destroyed my family. Dolores staggered back, and Marilyn shot over to catch her. Sis, are you okay? Dolores held her hands against her chest, wrestling to find a breath. Keanu, are you satisfied? Look at what you've done to your mother. Oki made his way into his cousin's room. What you guys yelling for? He witnessed his mother cradling his auntie. Anake, come, we'll go outside. Oki assisted Dolores out of the house into the garden, where she could get some fresh air. Marilyn stood in Keanu's room, watching the young woman's temper slowly dissipate. This is something that I cannot and will not ever understand, Keanu. All this time, ever since the day you were swept away in that tsunami, you have been seeing this, what, this creature? Keanu stuttered as she breathed, tears trickling from her face. Auntie Marilyn, Kaelu is not an evil creature. He is Kupua. We met and fell in love the day we went to celebrate Daddy's anniversary. He lives in a place that I can visit when our worlds cross over. Is that where you were just now? Because all I saw was you having a night terror. Marilyn gave her niece a chance to explain. I went there when I drowned, when I died. Kaelu could have kept me that day. I wanted him to. He told me that it wasn't right to leave Mama because she still needed me. To disappear on the same day as my daddy. It would have hurt Mama endlessly. She would have never forgiven herself, so I returned to be here. For her. Would a demon let a chance like that slip away? Marilyn was still confused about the whole situation. To her, the story Keanu told sounded just as fake and ridiculous as the words of the Bible. I don't know what to believe, Keanu. Although I must say, it must have made it easier for you to lie about the origins of this baby. I guess we should have been more careful with our words when we asked about your debauchery. Keanu shook her head in disgust. Auntie Marilyn, Kaelu and I never had relations like that either. On one of our visits we hugged, and when I woke up, Keanu presented her tummy. Marilyn huffed. Nonsense, all of it. The whole lot is absurd and impossible. She stormed out of her niece's room to check on Dolores and Oki. Keanu leaped to the floor in tears, searching for any remains of her precious kauri. None could be found. Keanu spent the next few hours sitting on her bed staring between two spots in her room. The part of the floor she had witnessed her kauri dashed to pieces, and the empty nest she had made from the cut strips of her floral garments. Her thoughts brought her to the conclusion that her carelessness had condemned her brand new marriage. She mourned the loss of her ability to see her husband, and contemplated how she would be able to reunite with him. The only way she knew how to see her love was through the power of his heart, the iridescent seashell that was now reduced to vapor and a fond memory. Her heart ached so much that she began to think about how all of this was affecting Keanu. "Oh, my sweet baby, I'm sorry for losing your father." The little one brushed around Keanu's stomach, making her feel a sense of peace. She decided to share more about Kaiulu, praying deep in her heart that Keanu's future, with his father, would hold more than just her stories. "Your father gave me his heart, but I lost it when two angry women stole it and smashed it against the ground. He gave me his heart a second time and asked me not to break it. But again, two angry women stole it and smashed it against the ground. I failed him and I failed you." Keanu began to cry and apologized to her child. "Forgive me, Keanu. I don't mean to be so overly dramatic, but I'm just afraid that I'll never see my best friend ever again." Keanu felt a warm sensation flow from her pico. She could feel the energy washing over the entire surface of her body. Light began to emit from her limbs, just like the morning after she and Kaiulu had frolicked in their ethereal butterfly forms. She began to laugh as the tingling sensation vibrated over her skin. It was as if her baby was encouraging her. Keanu's mind became sharp, and she focused on only one thing, taking care of her child. A renewed strength deep within her had created a sense of higher purpose. "You're right, my love. That's enough. No more tears." Keanu smiled and got up to her feet. She picked up the empty makeshift nest and placed it into the wastebasket. She started to clean her room as if she were welcoming the great King Kamehameha over to visit. Everything old and sentimental was thrown away or placed at the door to donate to those in need. Keanu was ready to sterilize the house of her very existence, wipe it all away as if she prepared to never return to her home. She took everything that made her room unique and simplified it to a minimalistic space. She packed the clothes she needed for her trip to Oahu in a tweed suitcase and placed it beside her bed. Keanu took only a few steps from her room when her cousin called out, "Oh, good. You can take lunch outside while I finish the tea." Oki handed the tray of food over to Keanu. After taking hold of the platter, Oki glanced up from the work area and was confused by the light that surrounded his cousin. As she exited the front door, Oki rubbed his eyes and looked at her once more. "Dry. I must be thirsty." As Keanu placed her family's lunch onto the table, John, Marilyn, and Dolores were all mesmerized by the aura of the pregnant teen. Marilyn looked up at the midday sun and back down at her own arms. "You're seeing this, aren't you, John?" Keanu's uncle took his hat off and began to wave it over himself. "It's a hot day, Marilyn. I don't know what I'm seeing." Dolores was just as confused as her guests, but she knew it had something to do with the creature that came to her daughter and duped her into a twisted relationship. She straightened herself as much as she could and awaited retaliation from Keanu, but her daughter just sat in her glow, sitting as quiet as a mouse. "I need you to pack up your things. Uncle John will be taking you to the airport tomorrow." At that moment, Oki had rounded the corner holding a stack of cups and a pitcher filled with iced tea. Keanu smiled at her mother and answered her respectfully, "Mama, I have already finished packing. My suitcase is sitting at the foot of my bed." Trying her best to ignore the pain in her chest, Dolores spun a spoon around in her cup, trying to dissolve the sugar she added. Keanu just looked at her cousin and asked for help. "Oki, could you do me a large favor?" The young man served his mother and father some tea as he responded, "What you need?" She waited for her cousin to sit before continuing. "I was hoping you could help me take some of my belongings to the church for donation." Oki nodded. "Sure thing, Keanu." Dolores' heart sank deeper than she could have ever dreamed possible. It upset her knowing that Keanu would rather choose to associate herself with the devil than to live the life she so graciously paved for her. "Why did you choose to go against God, Keanu?" The light around Keanu faded away. She looked at Dolores and responded, "Mama, I would never. Not against God, or you, or Dad, or anyone at this table. I'm so sorry that this played out the way it did, but I want you to know that I'm sorry that you do not approve of my husband. Kaiulu is a very loving, protective, and devoted individual. He would do anything to keep our ohana safe, you included." Dolores shook her head and detested Keanu's idea of family. "We do not commingle with demons. We commit ourselves to the people of this world. God's creations of flesh and blood. Keanu tried her best to reason with her mother. Mama, you, above anyone else I have ever known, have always been devoted to God, our Father. But didn't He create all angels in heaven and all the creatures in, on, and above the earth? Does that not include Kaiulu? Dolores reminded Keanu the history of the angels. Lucifer was cast out of heaven for defying God, and your husband doesn't even exist on God's green earth. Mama, but God doesn't live in our realm either, Keanu countered. The sickly woman slammed her fist on the table, causing the sandwiches on the platter to unfurl. Oki let out a groan as he gathered the ingredients to pull them back together. Dolores began to share how impudent Keanu had become. You think your husband is comparable to God the Almighty Father, Keanu? That's not what I meant, Mama. Keanu needed to think quick to find her footing. I'm just saying that God created everything, Kaiulu included. We are all His children, so what is the harm if we love each other? Dolores let loose a loud growl. If you want to be with the demon so badly, Keanu, why don't you go be with him then? Keanu growled back. Because you destroyed the one thing that I used to go to him. John and Marilyn were shocked at the young woman's fierce reaction. Oki didn't seem bothered by any of it. He just picked up another sandwich and began devouring it. Dolores wheezed. Good. I'm glad you won't be able to see that wretch ever again. Do you know what comes of children that are born through the communion of man and devils? Abomination, Keanu. The Nephilim were created that way, and they wreaked havoc all over the earth. Keanu shook her head. I should be thanking you for keeping me home on Dad's anniversary. I wouldn't have met Kaiulu if it weren't for you and the love you had for Daddy. I wanted Kaiulu to come meet you. He wanted to do it the right way. But things didn't pan out exactly how we wished it had. The tsunami made it all so very inconvenient. You wouldn't have accepted him anyway. He doesn't fit the picture of the ideal son-in-law, and I'm glad he never had a chance for you to scoff at him and make him feel lesser. Keanu stood up to excuse herself. All I ever wanted was to experience an ounce of love that I saw shared between you and Daddy. I had that. It was right in my arms, and you took it away from me. All I have now is my son, and I'm going to make sure he gets all the love he deserves. Keanu left the table and made her way back into the house. Dolores sat in disbelief and felt as if she had utterly failed as a parent and wife. Oki turned back around from watching Keanu leave. He looked sympathetically at his auntie and asked, So if Keanu not going to eat her lunch, can I have it? To avoid any more confrontations with her mother, Keanu spent the rest of her time at home, locked inside her bedroom. She hoped that she would have been able to strengthen the bond with her mother before she left, but once again, Keanu was left to navigate uncharted territory. She truly believed that nothing was going as planned in any facet of her life. In the morning, Uncle John pulled up to the house to collect his niece. Marilyn decided to stay back at the house to take care of Dolores, so she sent Oki to help his dad with his cousin. A knock at the bedroom door was followed by a soft, muffled voice. Keanu, are you ready to go? John's niece peeked out from the entry. He could tell that she had been crying for, quite possibly, the entire night. Keanu looked tired and worn, with eyes that were red and puffy. He leaned in and kissed her cheek, then moved into her room to grab the suitcase from the floor. I'll be waiting in the truck when you're ready, honey girl. Thank you, Uncle. Keanu's voice was raspy and rough. She turned to survey her living space one last time. She relived every special moment she had in that room within an instant. She recalled the night she spent talking to Kaiulu on her bed, the book she had read on her comfy chair. She looked at a corner where she, up until yesterday, had her old doll house. She hadn't really played with it for years. The only reason for keeping it all that time was because of the memories of playing dolls with her father as a child. She took one last glance at the spot where her kauri was smashed, her heart wrenched, but she turned back on those feelings, trying her best to leave it all in the past. Keanu was finally ready to move on with her life. She exited the room and allowed her childhood to die as she shut the door. Keanu made her way through the living area as Auntie Marilyn sat at the dining table with her mother. Neither woman said a word as Keanu passed them by. Before she got to the front door, Keanu stopped and looked toward her mom. She spoke direct and definitively. Mama, in spite of what you may believe, I want you to know that I love you, and I'm sorry. I'm not sorry that I fell in love with someone you disapprove of. I'm sorry that this is the state I leave you in. I never meant to hurt you. But, now that I'm having a child, I'm going to be there for him at every twist and turn of his journey until he finds someone that he can love like you did. Like I did. I will be there to support my baby to my final days no matter what. She smiled at her auntie. Goodbye, Auntie. Thank you for being here for my mama. She could see pain in her auntie's face, but Mama sat staring straight through her. Keanu believed she had really messed things up between her and her mother, but as soon as those dark feelings began to rise, she could feel Keanu fluttering about. Okay. Keanu opened the door. It looks like it's just you and me, Pooh. She exited the home, greeted by the warm morning sun kissing her cheeks. Keanu hopped into the front seat of her uncle's truck. She watched her house disappear and observed the roadside flowing past the window. It brought back the memory from when Aunt Edith pulled Henry Campbell's car over to give her and her mother a lift back home after church one morning. Just as Keanu's mind began to shift to poor Henry, her uncle cut in with a question. So this Kaiulu, he's a Kane o Kapo, and he will find you the day of the tidal wave? He's Kupua. Keanu smiled and turned to face her uncle. And yes, he saved me that day at Hemolele. Keanu noticed Uncle John's eyes stabbing at the reflection of his son in the rearview mirror. Oh, Oki was very much the reason for reviving me, don't get me wrong, but Kaiulu was the one that returned my soul back into my body. His gaze went back to the road as he cleared his throat. Kupu are not always what they seem, Keanu. Some only want to take advantage of the weak or unfortunate. Keanu nodded in agreement. I understand, Uncle. That's why Kaiulu told me I must never travel to his home without him. But if the guy cared that much for you, he wouldn't have disrespected Johanna like this, making you hapai, getting married without saying a word to any of us, to your mother. Uncle John started to sound like Auntie Marilyn. It was a shock to the both of us, Uncle. Who knew a hug could cause us to have a baby? After he spoke to his mother about what happened, he felt he needed to do the right thing and make an honest woman of me. Keanu tried to put Kaiulu in the best light. Uncle John grunted. Honest, huh? He looked at his niece's innocent face. Well, it's what upstanding men like us do. We make sure not to soil the names of our women. He looked up at his son bouncing around in the truck's bed. Oki was also unexpected. I needed to man up and do the right thing too. Your auntie is a very good woman, but there were things my mother, your tutu wahine, didn't agree with when it came to your Auntie Marilyn style. You see, we Halkeos are very spiritual, and may even seem superstitious to the foreign folk. But your auntie, she don't believe in anything she cannot see. Uncle John let out a huge laugh. Keanu knew exactly what he meant, but it didn't stop Tutu from allowing your union. Uncle John exhaled, bobbing his head. Well, it didn't go as smoothly as you think either. My mother was very traditional. She was one of those natives that was ready to fight for restoration. I think, in a way, it broke her heart to see both of her boys marry haules. I wish she could have been around for your and Oki's birth. It's probably the one thing I regret that she didn't get to experience. I think she would have really loved spending time with you kids. We'll see her. We'll all be together and share our stories and look back at how silly it all was. Keanu watched the silvery leaves of a kukui tree pass her side of the truck. Uncle John looked at his niece and couldn't shake how accepting she was about the life after. That Kaiulu really has you feeding from his palms, Keanu tittered. If Auntie Marilyn had experienced what I had went through that day, even she would have become a believer. Uncle John smiled half-heartedly as Keanu spoke earnestly. I don't know if Mama's going to make it to the birth of my child, just as Tutu Wahine passed away before we came along, Uncle. I don't regret her not getting to meet her grandson, but I regret she won't have something that would bring her joy in her final days. Keanu looked at her uncle. Would you tell her that I love her more than anything, so she won't worry so much about how we left things? She was so angry when we left. She couldn't even look at me. I just don't want her thinking that how she treated me today was how she would always be remembered. I know that's important to her. Uncle John nodded. Don't worry, Keanu. Your mother knows that you love her. That's why she needed to be so severe with you when you left. It was her final lesson to teach you. Haukeas choose strong women, Keanu. He reached his hand over toward his niece's shoulder and squeezed. You're just like your mama too, honey girl. So continue to be strong, and just remember to do what you said you would do, okay? Raise your child in a loving and responsible way. Don't spoil him, though. The truck pulled up to the airport. Oki jumped out of the bed and popped open the door. Uncle John grabbed Keanu's hand. You were destined to go through all of this, Keanu. Just try your best not to lose faith, no matter what the world throws at you. Keanu gave her uncle a tight hug. For a second, it felt as if she were holding her own father in her arms. Keanu hopped out of the front seat and waved to her uncle. I love you, Uncle. I'll see you soon. Uncle John's voice chased after his niece. I love you too, honey. Ahui ho, Keanu. Oki followed Keanu with her luggage in his hand. When they arrived at the ticketing booth, she could see Aunt Sakura, wearing a long jacket and wide-brimmed hat, standing by. She turned and took her suitcase from her cousin. "Thanks again for looking after my mama, Oki." She hugged him tight. "You're always saving me." Oki squeezed his cousin's small frame. "Take advantage of me while I'm still here." They shared a laugh and gave each other a nod. "Keanu." The pregnant woman looked back at her cousin. "I'm sorry about Kaiulu." Keanu rubbed her stomach. "It's okay, cuz. I still have the best part of him." She winked at Oki and continued her way over to the airline's check-in. Oki walked away with sadness in his heart. He could feel he was going to miss his little cousin, his little sister. He made his way back to the front of the airport and plopped his butt into the truck's cab. John looked at his son teary-eyed and grabbed a hold of his neck. "Boy, I better not ever see this again." Oki squirmed out of his dad's faux grip. "No worries, Pa. Lydia said she don't like have kids." John laughed. "Good. It's your mom that's gonna choke the life out of you instead of me." Holding everything she owned in her hand and Opu, Keanu walked nervously toward her mama's friend. Aunt Sakura welcomed the young mother with a huge smile. She looked down at Keanu's tummy and patted the top. "Hello, baby. Your first time on a plane?" She chuckled heartily, yet quiet at the same time. She pointed at Keanu's bag, and a man swooped in and snatched it away. "You get your luggage after you come off the plane, okay? My driver will meet you in Oahu and take you home. Make yourself at home, okay?" Keanu leaned in to hug Aunt Sakura, but her aunt bowed. Sakura extended her arms, and Keanu had already bent to show her appreciation. It became an awkward bow dance between them for a few seconds. "Thank you, Aunt Sakura. I appreciate you taking me in." Keanu was surprised how wide a brim Aunt Sakura's hat had. She added, "And I really love your hat." Aunt Sakura just laughed forcefully in a hushed tone. No, thank you, Mama. She always think of me. Make me feel so ohana." Aunt Sakura patted Keanu on her back so they would avoid starting another strange dance. Go. I will see you soon." Keanu ran through the gate and joined the line of people working their way up the aircraft stairs. Her heart thumped within her chest. "Well, here we go, Keanu." I hope you enjoyed that small taste of Pokane at Hemolele Bay. If you're interested in purchasing your own copy, you can order it at Amazon.com on paperback, hardcover, and ebook. Aloha.